could you just put in the chat box whereabouts you are joining from today, and if this is your first session, if it is, put a 1. If it is your second session and you were on the 12 p.m. tour, then please put a 2. We'd really love to see where everybody is joining from, and yeah. I was just having a few technical problems. Oh, amazing. Oh, this is brilliant, guys. Thank you. So anyway, so obviously welcome to the session today around Global Accessibility Awareness Day. We wanted to really bring today into what it is around Global Accessibility Awareness Day, but then how you take action in that, and how you as organisations and as employees can really shape accessibility going forward, and what taking the action really is going to do around accessibility, not just as a strategy, but also as a policy. It's not just about corporate world today. We're here to raise awareness, share personal experiences, and really showcase that accessibility is needed in the workplace going forward, and also within society. So next slide, please. Oh, I can actually. Oh, amazing. Thank you. So we are basically going to just go over a few bits and bobs, but there's a very special guest also on today, which I will share more in two seconds. So today, welcome everybody. Let's skip the dry corporate talk today, and let's really focus on why we're here. We're here for a reason around building inclusive strategies and informative policies that are going to drive change, take action, and really build a legacy going forward. As we know, it's about opening doors to the global market that empowers your businesses and empowers you as an employer. We are also fully aware that it changes the workplace and enables workplaces to be more inclusive within a diverse environment. I would really love to introduce Emi to the session, who is our special guest joining me. And I'm privileged to have Emi on the call today alongside me, sharing.
Olivia, thank you for that introduction. I'm really honored to be here today, especially for the Global Accessibility Awareness Day. My name is Emi Hutton. I am originally from Tokyo, Japan, but currently reside in the United States and Florida particularly. My background is actually accessibility SME, but it's also the product and program PMO, and also currently serving as a board of director for Lighthouse Blind of the Palm Beaches in the United States. But this is, besides my career perspective, this is very, very personal to me. I am also a cognitive low vision. I do have a lived experiences where firsthand I experience in the workplaces or even in a daily basis that accessibility needs to be impacted, changed, and impacted. So I'm really happy to have that conversation today with Olivia and the rest of you guys.
Amazing. So I just thought I'd introduce myself just quickly in a short summary. I'm Olivia Gallagher. I am a marketing consultant, but I also work alongside Mike at Accessible Me in the marketing background and accessibility background. I bring lived experiences, but also lens of a power athlete into everything that I do deliver around accessibility and workplace inclusion. I also bring strategy, growth, and policy all into everything that I deliver and how that can be accessible going forward. So my career actually has had a flying start. So I graduated with my master's last September. I've been in a very fortunate position that I've chosen a niche that is around accessibility and marketing. That has enabled me to really go forward with my career head first and have a flying start. So really grateful for the opportunity today to host this tour and really show you guys what accessibility can do going forward. Next slide, please. So today we've got 3 questions and we really want to make it informative and interactive as possible. We'd really love for you guys to get involved. So any conversation, any question, any thoughts on what we're talking about, then please put them in the chat box or raise your hand, and we really love to have you guys involved in the discussion. So it is basically about what do we need to do to shape accessibility, what changes can be made, and how can we do that going forward. Next slide, please. It starts with usability, not policy. Emi, do you want to jump in on that one as well?
Yeah, absolutely, like Olivia. So this is a really great topic, right? Organizations, they do like have a policies, and in a lot of ways, even like HR, whether regardless of accessibility or not. But to me, policy is really a paper, right? What you really wanted to do is you wanted to have a usability, have a discussion, open communication, and those are the things that are really important. Policy is important. However, really kind of like deeper dive in what you need to do. Usability, think about that consideration of usability is more important. Any thoughts, Olivia?
Yeah, it's about usability, but it's also about how you can make those effective going forward and how they can change the perspective of accessibility, not just within any sector, but also within the organisation structure and policy. So it's also in regards to how we're looking at the growth. What can be done to grow this within the businesses? What can be done to grow this within your current work scenario?
Yeah, and then
It's about
that's really good point too, right, Olivia? So a lot of organizations might have a more a compliance perspective, but at the end of the day, you might want to look into this, reach out to the different market. Like disability community is such a big market where people don't realize. And so having that strategy, yes, policy, all that, but how you can grow your business exponentially, and that's also a really good key point here.
it's about changing the narrative and rewriting the rules as you build and as you grow. Unless you change the narrative and rewrite the rules, accessibility is still going to be seen as a limitation. We're here to break barriers and take action around accessibility, but also not going forwards into the next few years and what we have planned around accessibility and how we deliver that, not just within the strategy, but as a strategy, as its own strategy that is compliant within every industry and every business.
Over to me forward, Olivia.
Yeah. Do you want me to do the slide? Oh, amazing. So, Emily, do you want to jump in on this one? You can go ahead.
Yeah. So how do you, basically moving beyond the awareness, right? You probably see like, I've been like to belong to like a D&I, like teams and staff in the different organizations. And then we all like often like celebrate about like, okay, Black History Month. I just can't kind of come up with some other different like awareness dates that HR do provide. And then we do that. But the awareness is not just like 24-hour thing, right? You will ongoing, especially for accessibility, it's an ongoing journey, but you got to really start. And then awareness is a really good starting point. But making sure that this is an ongoing journey and continuously talking about it, continuously making improvements. That's how this, I think, see that the beyond awareness is really important to have that conversation. Any thoughts?
I absolutely love how you described that. It's not just about beyond awareness. It's about what you're going to do from tomorrow. Tomorrow people are not going to be talking about accessibility. So it'll be onto something else, or it'll be it's not global accessibility awareness day tomorrow. So people will be like, oh, we're going to take the banner down and we're not going to mention it. What are we going to do to continue talking about that going forward? and raising that awareness from tomorrow for the next 365 days. How are we going to do that? What policy is going to be in place? And what strategy is going to be taken action?
Yeah, I really love that comment, Olivia. It's really, like I said, it's an ongoing journey and it is a nonstop, whether you're today or like, for the future kids, future innovator, it is there forever. So.
Sorry, I
GAAD
went too
is,
far.
sorry. Yeah, Global Accessibility Awareness Day is seen as a checkpoint. We want to change that. We want to change that it is seen as a checkpoint. We want to make it the norm and normality in every industry and every business. And you guys are in exactly the right place today to really see how you can shape accessibility going forward and how the perspective of accessibility is going to really change your business and change your experiences when you are looking to strengthen those strategies in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Olivia, this is a really good point, right? And then, we've been kind of talking about strategy, but really having open a conversation. And for instance, not everybody's going to be really, disclose, hey, I have disability XYZ, right? Of course, and officially, HR applications, a job application, they all do that. But, having like a simply, communication, is there any thoughts of what, like, creating, like, let's say, for example, like my case, like in a lot of like product in the software development perspective. And then maybe as a product manager, have we all thought about any like accessibility strategy? And that's a really good like discussing point, right? And then that kind of open the communication conversations, and then we can start to strategize how we're going to be implementing that.
Oh, absolutely love that. It's about implementing all of that, but it's also about implementing the personal experiences of people that have some accessibility needs or that have a disability. Because without that, it's not going to be able to be as effective. It's okay, somebody saying, oh, we have a accessibility policy. They may have that policy, but how are they using it? Are they using people with lived experiences to shape that policy and shape that initiative? Or is it just there to tick the box? We're not about ticking the box. We are about taking action on how this can really grow and develop, not just for the businesses, but also for personal people, for personal experiences coming in, and the compliance of how they all align together with in regard to whatever action is taken.
Yeah, and I really love that your keywords is an action, right, Olivia? Because so for example, in my case, and I worked for an organization where never thought about the accessibility in their platform and apps and so forth. And it's particularly working for something like an hourly rate workers. There's millions of people working there globally in retail stores or even like Starbucks or any of those. And um, you know, I, one of the like thing like really like struggle was that originally initiative is like, well, we don't have any resources, we don't have budget, we don't know what to do, where to start, right? So when I like really starting the accessibility journey ground up for that organization, we discovered a lot of different things. People don't want to talk about that, or I found those like requests in like one of those very bottom of the Zendesk, right? If I didn't go see those informations and then I didn't take the action, company could have been sued, right? And then which comes to compliance. So really action, proactive actions are really key here, Olivia, right? So
Oh, 100%. Like I've had experiences where I've been in a workplace and within a workplace, not just in person, but remotely as well. And they're saying to me, oh, we are accessible. This is our policy. What do you think of it? And I'm having to be very honest and go, You have a strategy and you have a policy, but where is the action that is being taken effectively? Where's the active action? No point having that there if you're not taking active action. And yes, fully aware that sometimes it's a budget limitation, sometimes it's the resources, but everything is done now online or via some sort of software, AI support system. So why not use that effectively to help you build what you want to build?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point with that. And then especially for, making it actions, and you don't have to fix everything and it all
No,
in one
no,
shot, right? The key here is because now here I'm going to put my PMO hat where you can strategize and you can
yeah.
prioritize what impacts the most, right? At hand. And then again, this is an ongoing journey. You can like try to do agility and then incremental changes. And then that kind of impacts you and reflects you say, well, I do have accessible statement on our website. We're working on it. And then people will see that, right? So that's like
It's
really good
about
action to start. Yeah.
100%, and it's about taking baby steps and about taking those baby steps, but then reviewing those as you go. Some of the steps may take a year, some may take 2 years, but it doesn't mean that that goal is not achievable. It is 110% achievable, but you're taking baby steps within the action to make that achievable.
Yeah. Great.
Next slide, please. Emi, would you like to jump on this one?
I'm sorry, say?
Would you like to jump on this one?
Um, yeah, so let's see. Any like a thoughts like maybe like Olivia kind of firsthand and maybe we can kind of have more good conversation with that or
Yeah, I know. So obviously this is shout out to excellence, and we're talking about excellence, but we're also talking about running those personal experiences and journeys into this. It's about shaping and learning, but also content, making sure that the content is accessible, that learning as you go is going to help you grow and develop. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, that's
it's
perfect.
about having the right systems, but then making sure that those systems are adaptable and adjustable as you build and as you go forwards as well.
Yeah, and I
And
think it's really good too. Sorry, Olivia. And then you kind of good point on this because I just kind of intervene a little bit for a system perspective too. And then I work with a lot of engineers, right? And then surprisingly, like user UX designers that I worked with, many of them know the word accessibility, but they never really had an actual, learning, never had an actual training to that. So just kind of wanted to bring it up. Sorry.
I've worked with somebody as well before where they know the word accessibility, but they've had no content around accessibility. There's
Mhm.
no training and there's no system in place. You have to have a system in place to shape accessibility, but also the structure and the learning as you go. About being open and honest with where you are on your accessibility journey.
Yeah, and I really love that how you said it, the accessibility journey for the ongoing. And then I also really do a lot of like a training and webinars and lunch and learns. And that's where like, you can like make a difference and impact. In my case, like I said, a user experience design or UX designers didn't know anything about it, how to even simplify, HTML and make that document accessible, right? And so I'm not a user UX designer, but I was actually coaching them, training them, and but that's how it works, right? You have to learn somewhere, and somebody have to kind of show them, and then having that lived experience between like right, Olivia has it, I have it. We can certainly, make the difference and impact that. And then I really love this slide. So
Oh yeah, 100%. So do I. And I think it's about the openness to learn and to build it as you learn And I've been, that's the thing that I've learned, is that I've been with an organisation previously where they have had no system around accessibility in place. I've had to teach them how to have accessibility within their content and within their system. It's about building and growing as a team. And they've really taken everything that I've brought to the table on board. And it's about using the content and using what you have in front of you effectively. And also asking those questions, asking those question that may bring a honest answer, because unless you have an honest answer, you're not gonna it's gonna be really hard to build and grow from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, part of this content and system and then training, all that, I think also they need to like to pass on the baton to people who are coming new to your teams too, right? So this is what I'm saying. It's an ongoing learning, ongoing journey, making sure that you're passing the informations to whoever come into your place so that, you have a full journey of content system and learning.
I'm worried that we've been talking for quite a while, so we'd really love to open the chat for any questions as well, like as we go along. So feel free to engage in conversation with whatever we're discussing on the slides. Next slide, if that's possible, please. Sorry, I haven't got control over the slide. So this is obviously a real world case study that Emi has actually been able to really do herself. She does audits around quizzes, etc. So yeah, Emi, would you like to take the lead on this one?
Yeah, so I definitely do, a lot of audits and stuff, not just like digitally, but it's also physically as well. I do have a really great personal experience like recently, right? And Olivia, of course, I love AI, so I happened to be attending an AI conference in Miami, Florida, about 2 weeks ago or so, and this was really, innovations in AI. It's a lot of great things that out there. Uh, but actually, like in actuality, I had a little bit different feelings, about perspective, and then I was able to do kind of audit as well, and then potentially came out the remediation plans too. But so the convention center really didn't have anything, all the exhibit, like thousands of people having the exhibit, great like display. But you know what? I have a low vision and everybody has a QR code for their marketing materials. And you can see what they do, like, their promotion, their what you're selling. But people who are actually presenting didn't have any like captions. And, of course, it's a big screen. And I'm watching this pretty far. And I couldn't really read it what the things are on. So I asked for like, do you have any audio descriptions? Well, there isn't any. Nobody asked for it, so we don't have one. That's a really kind of great example. So I'm like, oh, check. I'm gonna have to do this audit for this one, and then come up to remediations. Or even the break room, there was like restaurants there. All of those exhibitors have a QR code, Olivia. But you know what? I just wanted to have a quick lunch, and the menu was so far. There's no QR code. I couldn't see anything. I had to take a quick photo to see what I can eat. That's not accessible, right? Um, so I just kind of wanted to kind of bring this conversation and Olivia, what's probably with your experience, maybe you can share that and also the marketing perspective as well as your lived experience here.
Oh, 100%. Like, my marketing perspective is around strategy and growth and how they can make that inclusive. But my lived experience brings in the accessibility. They are having all of these things, but if somebody can't access those, then that is known as some sort of, discrimination and barrier. And it's about breaking down that barrier and breaking down that hurdle. Lived it, I would find it really hard. And Emmy told me about it, and I was like, this is not inclusive. This is not open to accessibility. They've limited somebody accessing what she was there to access. Yeah, it shouldn't be a battle just to access something. that everybody else is able to access. And I think that's what we want to
Absolutely.
get across.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I've done some like a data research and then Libya, like a statistics, 70% or more of the websites failed on accessible and then inclusive. And then, oftentimes the website shows we're accessible, but what exactly is accessible to people? And, for me as technical side, we have great engineers, great coders, but they're all sighted, right? They do also like a testing things, but it's all done by sighted people, never really tested by real lived experience people. So how that you can turn that to inclusive. So for me, that's why I do a lot of like audits and remediations. And you know what? I check everything. I check everyone. And you know what? Inclusive is not just like websites or e-commerce where it's on a daily basis, right? So.
It's daily basis, but it's also that they're excluding paying audiences. And it's about changing that narrative and going, you need to take action so that you are not excluding paying
Yeah.
audiences that have come to access what you have to offer.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I think that's the like first steps, change it and have a conversation. It's okay it failed for the first time, but you know what? You're working on it and you're making action to make that change.
100%.
So kind of like a conversation like this, right? Olivia, my experience at the Miami Beach Convention Center, the curb cuts effect, it's really important. And then, disability is a spectrum and not everybody has exactly the same disability. So having this curb cuts effect, I mean, it could be temporary, somebody have a temporary disability or somebody who's, have a pregnant lady with like small kids around their hands. They
Yeah.
have no any other way, and that's still considered temporary, like a disability, or somebody who has invisible disability. But you know
Or
what,
somebody somebody that's got access needs that uses a wheelchair full time,
absolutely, yeah. And so for having this carb cuts effect, right, to consider making to work for everyone, it's really like win-win situation for anybody. So
Yeah.
for whoever, designed, developed anything, just to have that mindset is really important.
Oh, 100%. It's all about mindset and it's all about taking the action with that mindset.
Does anyone have any question regarding to carb cuts effect? So maybe we can kind of have thoughts and get the feedback from people. Yeah.
Yeah, guys, we obviously want to open the chat for any questions. Feel free to obviously interact with whatever we're talking about as well, because it's valuable for you guys to be honest and open.
Mm-hmm.
I think an interesting parallel with the curb cut effect is how businesses overlook the fact that Google's crawlers and things that actually index your website for the search engine ranking they are essentially deaf-blind bots. If you don't have alternative text, if you don't have transcripts on your videos, those things are going to get overlooked. So accessible design doesn't just help us humans these days. It is actually helping your discoverability in tools like GEO. The generative AI optimized tools. So if you want to be picked up by tools like ChatGPT, if you want to be picked up by tools like Gemini, you need to consider accessible design because it's going to affect your business in beyond just helping people with disabilities, which in itself is the right thing to do.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
absolutely. I agree with that. And then, my case, I currently live in the United States, but I am originally from Japan, and Japan is just declining the young people populations and increasing crazy amount of older people, right? So really having this accessibility mindset and to make any changes, making the actions really important. And you see, like, I go home to Japan once in a while my God, it's like all the schools are closing and the increase of population, elderly, just, it's crazy, but that's the reality for some countries. So.
Oh, it's 100% the reality for some countries, you know, like in the UK, the population is mixed and very diverse. But you have people from Japan or the US coming to the UK because there's more career opportunities for them. But then if you go to somewhere like Southeast Asia or the UAE, the population there is very diverse as well. So you've got lots of diverse cultures in all countries. But it's interesting that you were saying about Japan though, that lots of schools are closing. That has obviously been quite recent, I believe, in terms of like the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And
so we are on the market for 26 trends. So it's not about this is showing what is working in today's market within 2026. So as you can see, we've got the figures and we've got what is exactly working. So we have, Emi, would you like to jump in on this one or should I do it first?
You can go ahead and then I can certainly like support that as well, and then the details. Yeah.
Yeah, so it changes the narrative from not just the risk minimization to business growth. Look at the 2026 data trends on the screen. Accessibility is now actively driving AI, enterprise requirements, and also modern employer brand. Then we have, but it captures this. It captures what we talked about, how we uncover friction. Emi, how do we find the gaps where people choose to not disclose disability?
Yeah, so I think this is a little bit of like, hard topic too, and not everybody is just feeling the same, right? But I think it's really having the open communications. That's how we can close the gap. Like Olivia used it, being honest about things, right? Even though, for example, like, I worked for an organization and, when I filed a application on job, and I said, you know what, I do have a disability. However, I think the HR didn't recognize that. And then, when I actually got like my orientations, nobody asked me anything about it. Communications, I actually simply asked, what accommodations do you provide? And we don't really have any details. You're just gonna have to give us what we need to do. So, really first thing is like the open communications in both ways, so we can actually close the gaps, and then we can kind of figure out how we can do it, how we can tackle it. You know, here, what I was actually looking at data the other day, and it's almost there's a $1.9 trillion in the disposable income for disability market, right? And so I think that's like really a lot of things we can do and grow. And then how do we close the gap? Really start making action. Having the first step is in the communication to close the gap. Any thoughts, Olivia?
Yeah, it's about perfection. It's about having the principle. It's not about it being picture perfect. You've got to have the principle and the action. It doesn't have to be picture perfect. It just
Yes.
has to have clear understanding and clear growth going forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important that, what, maybe they're misunderstanding. There may be like not understanding clearly, but like, for example, like I said, communication, having a conversation will like remove that frictions, and we can move forward, and we can come up with a strategy and know how do we move forward.
Oh, 100%. It's about how you move forward once you come up with a strategy and how the principle of that strategy is going to help grow and develop as you move forward.
Right? And do you want to kind of talk about this paradox as well?
Oh yes, definitely, 100%. Do
Yeah,
you
so
wanna?
yeah,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can do that. So for me, I always kind of say to like, as I growing up, I lived in Japan, I live in the United States as well. One of the paradox I really wanted to kind of share that I was kind of like in the like between, right, in a living a gray area because I was not blind enough, I wasn't sighted enough, and a lot of like system also we see right here today, whether it's websites or and even like reading materials, right? I struggled, honestly, right? Because I had to use different like tools and things like that to read it upon, or even tools available. And organizations like may not allow you to use certain like apps. Like for example, my case, one of the company I worked for, they weren't allowing me to use like read aloud apps. So I can read like, really long documentations or any training material, it was not permitted. So I think this, having kind of like living in the gray area, Olivia, really kind of make me like struggle. I couldn't flip the coins in either one of those. So how do I do that? And you're just gonna have to really be open-minded, communicate it, and then, find a way. But I just kind of want to share my paradox here.
Oh, 100%, and I love the fact that you've shared that and been honest and open. Like I come from a very good area as well, and I was delivering something, and they said you need to follow it this way. I said, I can't. I need to have it so that I can access it myself, so that I can follow it. I have a vision impairment. I'm severely sight impaired, so I have to have things where I have to visualize them myself and have it on my devices so that I can see. There's no point in me looking at something that is on a board 10 meters away. I won't see it. So I have to make sure that I have what is on that screen right in front of me as well, so that I can access it to the best of my capability. And it's about openness and having the conversation. You don't get unless you ask, and I think that's one thing that I've really taken forward.
Yeah, and I think to one of the really example here that probably many of you, right, when you go get hired from the
Yeah.
companies, they do like a training, like an onboarding training. And then have you ever done that? Olivia done those like sexual harassment
Oh
training
yeah,
videos and
yeah.
stuff.
Oh my God, yeah. 100%. I've done those, and you're doing them,
And
and they're not accessible. And I'm like, how do you
yeah,
expect people to access these if they are not accessible in a fully accessible format? And they're like,
yeah,
oh no, it's on the screen. I was like, that's not good enough. That is not good enough. People like to have things accessible to them, and you have to have that as an additional.
yeah. And I think it's not only those videos or training materials are not accessible and inclusive, right? And that's really that. But I think one other thing I really strike me was that it does talk about disability very little, about somebody who are in a wheelchair or potentially like may
Yeah.
have a carpal tunnel or things like that, but they never really disclose and discuss about having conversation about accessibility conversation to play. And that's I think one of the actions I wanted to kind of bring out to all the HR folks that you know maybe that part of that initiative to have a conversations to start this accessibility journey in your company. It's not just what your websites, it's not about your documentation, it is a whole entire organization to implement accessibility into your teams, to your even like C-suites, to executives. And I think it's really that action is important.
It's not about just disclosing that, it's about the language and how you say what you are delivering.
Mhm.
People who are in HR, it's about how you describing that you are accessible.
Yeah. And then maybe
How are
like we want
you
to hear
putting
from
that
other
forward?
people's thoughts as well. So if anyone has a comment, any, feedback, let us know, or any potentially like an experience, and then, or maybe somebody who is in the HR or C-level executive perspective, we love to hear that as well. So,
An
Yeah,
interesting comment in
100%.
the chat where Perla has shared one approach that's worked well within their agency is positioning accessibility as more than just a compliance initiative. So when you like clients respond much more positively when accessibility is framed as an opportunity to improve overall performance, like website performance, and a major part of that has been client education. Is that something you found in your work, Emi? Do you know, like the client education is a big part of that?
yeah, absolutely. And so part of my work, I do a lot of strategic partnership as well, and I promote, accessibility and of course, first conversations of compliance, like that what they
Yeah.
talk about. But I do is really train external, whether it's internal or external. Really, giving like a lunch and learn. I invite them, and that helps to understand how accessibility is important. And of course, I work with like different folks, like in salespeople too, and in marketing folks, that they can say, well, we're doing, great brand reputations, right? And so really having those external or internal or all those, training, it helps to also not only performance and be aware, and also, some people like, well, you know what? We can find those like better KPI, and how do
Yeah.
we put that in the next planning phase? And that's what I do. Like, well, let's do like quick, like a retro perspective and what we do well, what we didn't do well, and then include accessibility for that. So
100%. Like, I have the same experience with Emmy around what I do, and it's about including it, but then what is working and what isn't working, but also acknowledging that something might be working, but put it to work even more effectively, to make that change and make that adjustment to whatever is working and make it more effective by making that little slight adjustment. But then what isn't working, think about
yeah.
it in a way of that, why is it not working, and how can you make it work? How can you make it work, and how can that, by taking that action, make it work and make it be seen that it is effective and working within your organization?
Yeah, and especially like, fellow like product managers or PMOs or maybe like a CSMs, right? Share the business cases, because that's what I do for, what, this is a case that we found from different clients or,
Mhm.
customers. And any thoughts on this? Do you want to implement this in your product, your services? And I think that's bring the conversation, you bring the action, the starting point. And if you fail, you know what? Like I said, do the retro perspective, like any other, development project that you've done. Accessibility is no different.
If you, yeah, like, if you fail and you pick yourself back up again and build again. But you use that as a learning curve to what you've learned for you to process and what you can do more effectively going forward. It's about baby steps, but it's also about reviewing and taking the action where the areas where there might be gaps. I've done marketing strategies, growth strategies, and some of them that I've seen, the reason that people have had gaps in those strategies, or that they've not been able to see the growth that they want, is because there's a lack of key areas that are being shown effectively, and a lack of key areas that are the main priority for that set amount of time. It's about having a set amount of time to review different areas rather than having them all at the same time.
Yeah, and then especially like the marketing, you kind of good point here, right? And Olivia, because
Mm.
I also do a lot of like the AI, like a social listening tool. You probably like all the companies, everybody has like YouTube and FB to like LinkedIn and all those videos and TikTok. And you know what? Disability communities are such a small communities, but once your negative sentiment goes viral, it is so hard to come back to the positive and protect your brand, protect your company. And that's how you do not only the marketing, but you do your growth, right? And then once you have disability community in your side, I think your, company branding to your reputation is gonna be go up high. So
Oh yeah, 100%. And also as well, it's about having that, but also building the momentum. The momentum does not build unless you start. Unless you start
absolutely.
somewhere. You have to start somewhere. And if you start where accessibility is gonna be in the business, we've never had it before, but we're about to go all in and start and begin.
Designing.
Yeah, so that is basically, it's about the design around accessibility within the workplace, but also building that momentum as you build, as you develop it. But without momentum, action is not taken. And the momentum is there for a reason. That is to help develop, perceive, and perform. It doesn't have to be perfect. The perfection does not have to be perfect, but as long as you are being seen and you are taking that action, then it's gonna grow and it's gonna thrive.
Yeah, and I love this slide to the momentum. And then it doesn't have to big changes like you said, right? Even like a small one thing you planned, you developed, you delivered, and then celebrate that and have that momentum and share with anyone, share with your team, share with your manager, share with your cross-functional team members. And then I think having that, even just small celebration and of a momentum which make that huge difference in your teams to like what accessibility journey will be.
But also celebrate those little wins, but bring in those people that have personal and lived experiences to help shape this and help build that momentum. So those people, I can promise you, are right there with their own lived experiences to really deliver what they believe is gonna be the future going forward. Celebrate those wins, take that action, but use that momentum as your front line and your driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Shall we go next?
Yes, let's do that. GAAD is not just the finish line, it's the focus on progress, not perfection. We've covered this. Yeah, you're in it for the long run, you're in it for the long goal, you're in it for the long haul. It doesn't happen overnight. We know this, and Emi and I 100% agree with this. It does not happen overnight, but you have to take steps to build and take that action. It's
Yeah, I love this.
it's not you're gonna be there and it's all gonna be done and it's all gonna be completed. No, you're still gonna be using what you've already put forward to go even further. And within the industry that we are in right now, accessibility is only just being seen within HR, within leadership, within corporate, within any industry. Accessibility is just getting started. Have that in your head. It's just getting started. 5 years ago, if you said to somebody that, oh, can you do a training around accessibility, they'd be like, oh, we don't really focus around accessibility. We're in 2026 now. Let's make this year count with accessibility going forward and use the trends coming in. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about progress.
Absolutely. And I really love this slide, and it's very simple, but which is true, right? And
Yeah.
it's an ongoing journey. There's no finish line, and then focusing on progress. And for example, here in the United States, just recently, DOJ, announced that new deadline time for any organizations to be updated for accessibility to be compliant. it is a deadline, and I think now that's where you should be starting. But again, even though there is a DOJ deadline or ADA deadline, it is not deadline. It is ongoing, and they keep going to the process. And I think that's the key here. So,
like from the UK and in the EU, the States is ahead by 10 to 5 feet. The EU and the UK are just beginning and just building, but we are beginning with the US as the front line. The US is shaping accessibility, and they have been for a number of years, but it's taking action now. It's taking deep diving action, and that's where collaboration, networking, training, and delivery, all of those 4 things,
yes.
are gonna be a sign of progress. And
Yeah.
and that is not a finish line. Global
Yes.
Accessibility Awareness Day is not a finish line. It's a starting point. It's a starting point for the next 30 days to a year to 5 years.
Yes.
Could we go to the next slide, please? Emi, do you want to do that? I would love for you to do this one.
Yeah, that's definitely, so it's like I said, the accessibility is a really inclusively like a show points, and it's really important, right? And kind of like really coming to the same kind of conversations where, what, it's a starting point, create the roadmap, and plan it. In my case, I do a lot of like sprint planning for my teams, right? And there's a case where oftentimes I couldn't get accessibility or localization, globalization to be on the roadmap. And I keep getting pushback. Well, it's not a mainstream project, so you shouldn't be on your roadmap. Well, that's not true, right? Because now you're talking impacting, I mentioned that 1.3 billion people who might have disability, and then potentially $1.9 trillion on this, disposal income potentially done. You know what? Create this roadmap. Start. And this is actually really like the points that we want to make here for here. Any thoughts, Olivia?
Oh yeah, 100%. Create that roadmap and get advice on that roadmap. And what could your organisation do to support GAAD, but also to support accessibility? Would really love for you guys to answer that question. Either put your hand up or answer it in the chat. It's about embracing inclusion, shaping change, and building action. It's about that saying that accessibility is not a limitation. It is here to grow and develop and build with that roadmap. It's about baby steps and that long-term vision, tunnel vision, long-term around accessibility going forward.
Yeah, and I think many of the organization might, I don't know which organization, what stage you're in, you might be starting from the ground up and may not know where to start, or maybe company that been on some like, accessibility journey. You know what can you make it to like more better? Like for example, like WCAG have 2.1, 2.2, and then now the maturity level on 3.0. So depending on even where you are in your situation or stage of your accessibility journey, but still create roadmaps, create the sprint roadmaps and meet that goal, right? And then again,
set those targets, set those KPIs within that roadmap, so that you are seeing that you are hitting those targets, hitting those specific goals that you've set out for your organisation. Yes, if you come out of today and start tomorrow, where we are starting from the ground up, that is absolutely fine, and there is no shame in admitting that, because you are taking action on the back of Global Accessibility Awareness Day to really build something within accessibility. And if you've been doing it for some time and you feel like the pace has been going slow, take advice, share what you have that things might not be working. Review that roadmap, review the strategy, review what you think is potentially slowing the pace down, and how can it be done. Emi and I are here to offer that, and we'd really love to support you guys where possible with that one.
Absolutely, and exactly. Any questions, any thoughts so far?
Let me just check the chat box as well.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm on 2 devices, so I have you guys play my Bluetooth for my implants. Just
It's all
keeping
good.
it
So
real, guys. Keeping it real.
Jack's asked the question, would love to know some of the tools and strategies people in the session use to address cognitive needs, such as creating more accessible content and spaces. I've already linked to the COGA, the Cognitive Accessibility Guidelines, but yeah, it'd be interesting to know if you use any others in your work, Emi.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think depending on where in your journey and what is your really budget as well. Many of my clients at enterprise level, they tend to have more funding, so they use like a paid version of some of the tools. But if you are really starting, I'll go ahead and use like open source like the Wave and like Lighthouse, and there are so many different new tools out there. They do actually color contents, just even like figuring out PDF information, and even just as simple as Microsoft have an accessibility check tool like built in. You can just go ahead and use that. For the Google products, not so much, but really having those, I would just try using like Wave, just kind of the basic figuring out. Also, DQ system has a pretty good tool as well.
Yeah.
And there's so many new AI related, accessibility tools to really find out where you are. So there's so many listings that I'd be more than happy to share later on to what are the like open source and what are the paid version and how that works. Feel free to LinkedIn me, and I'd be more than happy to give that information and details.
I as well, like I'd be more than happy to share the tools that I use that have been effective as well doing voice for my organizations that I work with. And yeah, feel free to LinkedIn me because it's about using those tools, but then maybe going in a bit deeper with those tools and doing, what if we tried this? How would you think it would work? How would you think it would be effective? The accessibility tools are changing and developing day by day. There's new tools coming in orbit, every corner, every now and then, and it's about grabbing those and really having a sit down and thinking, what is it that within the accessibility tools that I have access to that actually could be put into action and be very, very beneficial to our organization and our team.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point for that. And, there's new tools out there to really check, what, contents and stuff that's accessible, but it's also, AI is nothing 100%, right, Olivia? So,
Yeah.
we do have really great automations, you have good tools, but at the end of the day, really hiring like lived experience person to do the manual testing, which is
Yeah.
really key because, everybody has a different spectrum of disability. They're the best resolve person for you. They'll tell you exactly what is wrong, what needs to be fixed, and then that's a good help, right, for
Oh
organizations.
yeah.
And then so
100%.
um
100%.
really put that in your budget, your considerations, have the external lived experience person as your manual tester is really good key to kind of help
Oh,
organization elevate it.
oh yeah, 100%. And it's also about being, these people will come in and they will be honest with you. And you may not like to hear what they have to say, but they will bring in their honest opinion regarding this, because I can tell you now, I've been very honest to some people about their strategy and about their growth strategy and policy within the marketing, but also within the accessibility side. And they're like, oh, you just very honest about it. I said, well, you did ask me to be honest. So it's about being honest, but not being afraid of that honesty, because it's going to help you guys grow and develop and take the action going forwards. You know, we really want you guys to share your progress, inspire others, and take that action. That is one thing that we want you guys to do. We will be supporting you guys all the way through, but we want you guys to share your progress, even if it's a little win where we've come away from Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and what we've done is we've really sat down and we've started to build our accessibility strategy and our policy. That is a win, guys. Any little win, any little action, we want to see that, and we will celebrate that with you. And you will be inspiring other organizations, other people to really take the action themselves.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to hear from you guys, your progress, even just little steps, right? Or even like you felt, well, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. We want to hear. We wanted to help you. We wanted to, guide you. We wanted to best, possible like solution with that situation. So yeah, feel free to shout out and give us any feedback or any questions.
Any questions that you have for us, please feel free to put them in the chat or just message us on LinkedIn, and we'll be more than happy to answer.
I would advance to the final slides just so people can connect with you and find your URLs. But of course, if anybody does have any questions for Q&A, we do. I appreciate you. We are over time, so thank you everyone who is still here and joined. If you do need to drop off, we will absolutely pop the recording onto YouTube, so you can catch up if you need to, and we will share the resources. But we do have a couple of minutes with our speakers. If anybody does have any questions, please feel free to use the chat or use that raise hand feature. You can come off mute and ask your questions that way.
And Michael, I'll be here for a little while too. If anyone wants to have any questions, I'll be here to answer as well as Olivia. So
Yeah, 100%.
Just a final word from me then, as obviously the CEO of Accessibility, a thank you for joining, and a big thank you for Olivia for leading today's session. Obviously it's the first one of the inclusive insight sessions that I myself haven't led. And thank you, Emi, for guest speaking today. It's always great to hear diverse perspectives. And I believe our audiences find it very useful. So thank you so much for making the time, and I look forward to continue to work. Thank you, Jack. I've noted you need to drop off, so take care, and we'll share the resources soon.
Yeah, and then thank you, everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. It's been great to lead this, and I think, I work closely with Mike anyway, but to lead this and obviously take the lead around accessibility from my perspective, but then have Emi a guest speaker has just been really insightful, and I feel like people are going to get a wide range of experiences and a wide range of people's perspectives on this. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, guys. So yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and we will catch up with you soon.
Absolutely. And thank you for the happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day.
With that, I'm going to stop the recording, because I know just from a psychological safety point of view, some people prefer not to ask the questions if something is recorded. So the